Welcome to our podcast, When Life Gives You Lemons. I'm Kevin Henry, and my partner in crime in life is Palmi Henry. I have a rare disease known as spinal cerebellar ataxia, which is a neuromuscular disease. This has left me mobility challenges as well as with a speech impediment and noise-induced anxiety.
Living with these disabilities for over 20 years, we have developed helpful hints and life lessons that we would like to share with you that has made our life easier and possible in some cases. We consider ourselves disability advocates and intend to educate ourselves and you about other disabilities and issues, and also talk about things we find interesting and frequently encounter when we're out and about. Hi, Kevin. Welcome to the second episode in July.
Okay.
So we've been through the ringer for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So we're running a little late on the episode. Kevin was passing a 9mm kidney stone, which ended up having to be in the hospital twice. And then eventually he'll have the stent removed here in another week or so. So it's been an ordeal, right?
Yeah, it hasn't been fun, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So the nurses, when you were in the hospital, were quite impressed with 9mm. They said the only other bigger size ones than that they'd seen is a 17mm. I think your response was, just kill me.
Yeah.
So our episode is going to be about the VA, how to get VA disability insurance. No, not insurance.
Insurance, but
healthcare.
We're not really talking about how to get it. We're trying to dispel the myth that's easy to get.
Right, it covers everything too, because it does not.
Well,
which we learned.
In theory, it does, but
right,
without somebody telling you what form you have to submit and telling you what program is out there that you're applying for, no.
Okay, so let's start with your story. Your story was 25 years ago. You started having some ataxia. At that point, we didn't know it was ataxia, but you started having some symptoms. Stumbling your feet, having trouble with speech, in addition to the double vision that you'd had all the time since 1984. So we started on that journey. It took us 3 years to get a diagnosis of ataxia. During those 2 years, we knew that we needed to have some income coming in because it was just my income, and we were a 2-income family and we lived that way. We had bought a house and all that stuff. So we had to pay our mortgage and everything else that entails. So that took 3 years to get the diagnosis. Within that 3 years, we started working on getting disability through the Social Security. That was not easy, but it was more straightforward than the veteran process. That took us about 5 years to totally get all of everything taken care of. It is not easy. It is a complex application process. The VA disability benefits include extensive paperwork and documentation. So we had to go back 5 years of all the doctors that we had seen and get documentation from all those doctors in order for us to support our claim of disability. The veteran had to provide detailed medical records. This eventually included going to the Mayo Clinic in hopes of a cure at that point, trying to distinguish which ataxia that you had. They basically concurred with the result we had from St. Louis, Washington University that said it was cerebellum ataxia.
Spinocerebellar ataxia, yes.
There you go. And so we had to produce evidence linking your condition to then your service. The fact that you became double vision back in 85 was a strong evidence of that, but we had to put other support to that too. The VA has stringent criteria for determining the severity of the disabilities, and to receive a high rating, veterans must demonstrate that their conditions significantly impair their ability to function like everyday life. And that's, obviously you could not work, so that was a lot of it.
Right.
Along with that, we had to have significant and compelling medical evidence that was crucial. This included not only medical records, but also testimonies from healthcare providers, families, friends who could attest to the impact of the disability. Some veterans may hesitate to file a claim due to misconcept about the process or stigmatism associated with seeking disability benefits. Did you have any of that, Kev?
Yeah, I did, because at first I thought, there are some jobs I could have, but back then they were not available to me.
Well, it had to have been some type of work that you could do from home because you had no way to transport yourself because you couldn't drive, or something like that. And working remotely was not viewed as something that was readily available, correct?
It goes farther than that. If I'm in a business setting, and obviously I'm what they call unemployable, because a potential employee or employer will look at me and say, well, gosh, we have to insure him for whatever damages he's going to do to the property, as well as himself or others.
Right. So there was no availability for work for you in that aspect of it.
Yeah.
And not only that, you were on medication that would make you take naps during the day, and your strength wasn't that Stamina wasn't that well. It still isn't. You still have to take quite a few breaks in order to make it through the day. So, as the fifth reason why it's challenging to get the VA disability rating is because you can be denied, and a lot. What'd you say? 30.
The denial rate is the approval rate for a claim is 30 to 35. Once you get denied, you can appeal that denial, and the reversal of that is also 30 to 35%, which I found
approval out of that. Yeah,
I did they're the same number. Yeah.
So, and that indeed is what happened to us. We were denied. And because it was you had so many details, it was confusing. And because the what you have is very rare and confusing in that manner. So what we did was
not only that, when you look at some of the denials we've had, it's almost like, was that a denial? Or was that really, it's hard to tell the way it's worded. Sometimes they denied your claim, or if they just had a question that needed answered, or what,
right.
Because
they do come back with questions.
They don't come out and say, yes, you're approved, or no, you're not.
Right. It's very wordy and confusing.
Yeah.
So, you can, and we did reappeal. We went to our Veterans Service organizer, the serviceman that we was assigned to, and he helped us reapply through a senator of our state of Missouri. It was State Senator Emerson, Mrs. Emerson at that time, and she walked it through the process through the VA. I think her aides probably do that, but that is available to you if you are denied.
A lot of times, just having the VA know that they're under scrutiny by an outside agency who's going to call foul if there's something questionable about it, makes them really make sure they're adhering to the letter of the law.
Yeah, there's lots of people applying, and I'm sure you get lost in the shuffle, and people are just passing things on. It's all paperwork at that end of it. When you become more of a person through someone working in your favor, it would help. It does help get that process through. So what we want you to understand is, yes, we did get an approval. We got eventually, it was 5 years later. The nice part about that is they backdate it. So we received funds for that 5 years that we had been fighting for. So they gave us basically, it's a big check in the very beginning.
That is pretty much the same with all VA claims.
Right.
They backdate it. It's official from when you applied, so it always goes back to when you applied.
Right. And so what that meant for us was he did get a disability amount that he is paid each month to help with the additional expenses that do occur. As we've talked about throughout this whole podcast, being disabled is very expensive. Everything costs extra. Everything costs more. We had already had our house handicapped accessible when we built it because we could not find a home that could easily be converted.
We actually, during this past year, have had our house remodeled to where it's more handicapped accessible. No, the VA did not pay for that. They turned us down for that claim as well.
Right.
We also purchased a very nice handicapped accessible van, which the VA did not pay for. They turned us down for that as well.
Right. So even though we did get an amount he does get an amount each month. Is not enough to live on, not even for one person. And in comparison, when you're handicapped, everything costs extra, like is what I was saying. So they basically pay for all his medication they used to, but about 1 year ago, there was a change in the way that they want to look at what are the drugs called? Clozapam, but what is it considered?
Benzodiazepam.
Right. But it's a controlled substance. It's in that controlled substance list. And so they have made a statement where they don't want to handle those kind of drugs anymore through the VA. I guess there was some people taking advantage of it. I don't know what the result of that was. You have to realize
the way they mail out those prescriptions, I'm sure a lot of them
got lost in the
missing,
mail. Yeah. So, and it is dangerous, but they do. He does have TRICARE for life, which you get when you retire from the military, and he does get Medicare because we do qualify for that. So his clozapam or any other drugs that is not administered through VA is through his health insurance. The other concern was wheelchair. Kevin has gone. He's been handicapped for about 25 years now, 25 or 28, about that. And he's had different needs throughout that whole time. He started out with, I think he's told you this, he started out with a cane, and then it became obvious he could not use that anymore. He then went to a walker. We had to have a specialized walker because he had his feet that splayed outward, and he could not fit into a normal walker, so we had to have a specialized walker. And then we eventually went from a manual wheelchair to a advanced wheelchair, and now we're at probably our most advanced wheelchair we've had so far, minus that first one that you got that was not even. They thought he was, because his diagnosis said that he had only 5 years to live, they thought it would progress much quicker than it has. Thank God it hasn't. And they gave him a wheelchair with all the whistles, and it was way more than he needed at that time.
It was way beyond what I needed for a wheelchair.
Even now.
I just needed something to get around in. And this thing had, I don't know, a
puff and
attachable dinner tray.
Anything you could think of, basically.
Yeah. It was.
You could lay him backwards in case he fell asleep in the chair. So it was way beyond what he needed at that point. We did end up donating that to a charity here, and I'm sure someone has gotten great use out of it. Unfortunately, for a very short time, but we got that through the Medicare. The thing with Medicare and VA is they will only give you motorized vehicles every 5 years. So we got that over diagnosed wheelchair to begin with. We had trouble getting in and out of our car, so that was not practical. And then we went to Medicare that was through Medicare. And then we went through the VA to get a manual chair for when you couldn't use that chair. And then we had to wait 5 years to be able to get anything else. So that's when you went ahead and applied through the VA for the scooter. Unfortunately, at that time, some of his abilities was that he could not, he was losing feeling in his fingers, and so he couldn't do a joystick. And so he thought a steering wheel would work better, but we found that we were not allowed access to certain places, restaurants, lots of plays, stuff like that we went to. They just would not allow you to bring a scooter in there. They are not, they're pretty cumbersome, and they're not very accurate when you drive them. You can't get that accurate. You couldn't drive him up to a table. We would have to transfer him from the scooter to the table to another chair. So it wasn't practical. So at that point, we asked the Medicare, we were back to Medicare to get you an electric wheelchair. And that is when we got the Jazzy, right? Mm-hmm. That was great. We had that for probably the longest of all the wheelchairs we've ever had. He wore the wheels out 3 times, so they had to replace the wheels on the chair 3 times. But it eventually became, he was in the chair constantly, and that does not adjust your back or allow you to, he's sitting up all the time. So he got a lot of back issues and stuff like that. So that's when we went back to the VA and asked them for this current chair that we have that is probably more fit to what you need right now, isn't it?
Yeah, the only regret I have is it's not a power up and down for the back.
He can't adjust it.
There's no way for me to adjust it. It's a 2-person thing. Somebody has to sit and say, okay, yeah, that's where I did it. And somebody else has to make the adjustment in the back after you take the cover off.
Off the chair up, basically apart. So, and we want to make it clear that the VA will treat the symptoms, but they don't actually treat the disease. So like this kidney stone that he had, we didn't even go to the VA because they would have sent him to a practicing doctor, local doctor, community doctor. We don't go to, they have no neurologists. So that's basically what Kevin's primary doctor is. And so we go to a doctor that was referred to us by the specialist doctor in St. Louis to be able to handle his medications, because that's basically all you can do. There's no cure. We're just trying to calm down the spasms and any other issues we might have. Like when he broke his arm or broke his leg, we would always We'd have to report it to the VA, but we would go through the community doctors. And in that place, your insurance would cover it. And sometimes if you can arrange it in time through the VA, it'll go through them and they give you a local doctor. So it's confusing, hard to work through, a lot of bureaucratic crap. Speaking of bureaucratic crap, we're going to talk about VA math. And I don't know if you guys have heard of such a thing before. The VA math is used when they determine whether you have a disability or not. It is very complicated. Does not make sense.
Basically, nobody really understands it unless they have an aptitude for math. They're a VA, lawyer, so to speak, or a VA service officer.
And sometimes not even that, because we've confused service officers before.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to read this because it is very complicated. I'm just going to read the basics, a simplified explanation of it, so it does not get confusing. So VA math.
It will get confusing. Just
wait and see. VA math is a unique method used by the Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA, to calculate a veteran's combined disability rating when they have multiple service-connected disabilities. Unlike regular math, where you can simply add the percentages together, VA math involves a more complex process. And here's a simpler explanation. Okay. 1, start with the highest rating. If a veteran has multiple disabilities, you begin with the highest percentage rating. 2, subtract from 100%. Subtract this percentage from 100% to determine the remaining effectivity of the veteran's body. Apply the next highest rating. Take the next highest rating and apply it to the remaining efficiency. This process continues for all subsequent ratings. Round to the nearest 10%. All ratings are combined and the final percentage is rounded to the nearest 10%. For example, if a veteran has a disability rated at 30%, 20%, and 10%, the combined rating is not simply 60%. Instead, it is calculated as follows. Start with the 30%, subtract from 100, that's 70%. Apply 20% to the remaining 70%, which is 14%. Subtract 14% from 70% to get 56%. Apply 10% to the remaining 56%, which is 5.6%, and you get 50.4%. The combined rating is then rounded up to the nearest 10%, resulting in a 50% total disability rating. Is that as clear as mud?
It's never clear to me.
Okay, so they say that this method ensures that the combined rating accuracy reflects the overall impact of multiple disabilities on a veteran's ability to function. And if you have any further questions, you can go to VA Math, Military Disabilities Made Easy, or #1 in Veterans Disability at HTTPS. You'll have this in the show notes, right?
Yes.
I won't keep going on this. So, I wanted to talk about how the VA even got started.
Okay.
So the VA is the VA that we know, the administration that we know, is not very old.
Okay,
it's been things have been in existence, but this portion of it has not been in existence since the 80s.
Let's start off by defining what the VA is. The VA stands for Veterans Administration. It's all geared towards people who served and either need some sort of help or some sort of compensation to function in society.
As a result of injuries they've received through their military career.
Correct.
Okay. So early beginnings of the veterans benefits, not Veterans Administration, but veteran benefits in the United States date back to the American Revolutionary War. But a dedicated federal agency for veterans wasn't established until much later. That much later was in July 21st of 1930. It was President Herbert Hoover who signed an executive order creating the Veterans Administration. This new administration consolidated various veterans programs and services under one umbrella. A lot of these veterans things were based by the state, so they basically pulled them all into a federal program. The expansion of the services in 1982, the VA's mission was to expand to include caring for civilians and non-veterans in case of national emergencies. Becoming a cabinet-level department, that happened in 1989. The Veterans Administration was elevated to a cabinet-level department and renamed the Department of Veterans Affairs. This change aimed to give veterans issues more prominent and direct access to the highest levels of government. Now, today, the VA provides a wide range of services, including health care, disability compensation, education assistance, home loans, and burial benefits. It operates numerous medical centers, clinics, and benefit offices across the country. The VA's history reflects that the nation's commitment to support those who have served in the military, adapting and expanding its services to meet the changing needs of veterans over time.
To sum it up, the Veterans Administration did not exist until the Great War, World War I. That was when we had a huge amount of people coming back from that war to jobs they could no longer do. They either needed retraining or they had to have those jobs modified for their abilities because their abilities changed.
Right. Loss of limbs, loss of mental PTSD.
Back then, it was just called shell shock, and it was just, somebody got their marbles rattled, and every now and then they'd relive that. So,
right, same thing that most military people go through now when they see such tragedies and horrific things that they have to witness. So. Basically, the VA disability rating process is very challenging. We have gone through it ourselves, and we concur with that. But there is help out there, and you can, if you, we'll have in the show notes, we'll have support people that you can get a hold of if your disability is associated with the VA benefit, with your VA services.
Just bear in mind that we have no idea how some of these people get paid, but they do post YouTube videos. They seem quite informed as far as how the process goes. How they make money out the process, I don't know.
Oh, you're saying go to YouTube for...
yeah.
Well, go to your service,
go
VA
to YouTube,
service.
It's free.
Yeah, but you can go to your VA service representative, and it's probably a safer bet.
It is a safer bet.
And it's a free service, so...
Because there's got to be 100 different factors that play into each individual claim.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe how many forms you have to fill out, and they have to be perfectly filled out completely the way they like them filled out. Otherwise, they totally reject a lot of times the service rating is not rejected. It's the paperwork that has not been completed correctly that's been rejected. So a lot of times you need help getting through that mess.
Especially when you're talking about a program that will provide you assistance, and the Veteran Service Officer has never heard of that program.
Right.
You have to bear in mind that the first form he fills out is probably not the form he needs.
Right.
There is a very famous author by the name of Rant who compared a bureaucrat to a corrupt official. Just out to make money off you and steer you wrong. He will do you wrong. A bureaucrat who does wrong can ruin your life.
Yeah. Didn't you say you listened to something on YouTube with something Black? What's his name?
Louis Black.
Louis Black. Go ahead and tell that.
He, in case you don't know who Louis Black is, he's been around a long time, but he's a comedian who uses a lot of profanity, and basically he was corresponding with a veteran who was trying to make a very straightforward, you would think, claim, and he was just amazed how it got so screwed up. So I will also put a link to the show notes, but you also have to bear in mind he uses a lot of profanity.
So if you're offended by that, don't listen to it.
Right.
But it is an interesting story. It's the gentleman that wrote into him was making a claim for breast cancer. He was a gentleman, of course, and he did serve, and he believes he was exposed to toxic chemicals while in the service. And he's basically almost become homeless because of all the bureaucratic stuff that he's had to go through. Additional money needs and stuff like that has cost him almost his home. So trying to get his home, he can't live in his home or leave his home because he's handicapped, but he can't go anywhere either because he doesn't have any transportation. So it's a big, long story. It is very interesting.
Yeah, it's I want to say it's typical of VA because initially he was denied based on the fact he's a dude.
Right. Like men can't have breast cancer. I mean, that's just not even common sense.
It was a bureaucrat, obviously, who makes that decision, whereas doctors know that dudes can't get breast cancer.
Right. So let them listen to that on their own and draw their own conclusions. But it is, in fact, a good example of how many VA servicemen are homeless because of needs that are not met. That we have a lot of mental illness out there in the homeless and with the VA, service members. A lot of suicides. So there's a lot of stuff that they could step up and do better about. That's very important. If these men and women have given their life for us, for our freedoms, and that's the least they can expect is some little bit of support. So that's the way we feel, right?
Yeah, that's exactly why we're sitting here talking about it.
Yeah. We're
trying to make people understand it's not as easy as people think it is. Oh, the VA will take care of it.
Right.
Yeah, it might take him...
thousands of people fall through this.
It might take him 20 years to actually get it right.
Or never. And it result in suicide or frustration and suicide and that kind of thing. So, all right. Well, we've gone down the really sad zone here. So let's take care of some housekeeping.
Okay.
What did we want to remind him of?
The end of year giveaway, where we give away a piece of art from Deanna Ives.
We're going to look and check with Deanna and see if she has some kind of completion yet, and we'll get a copy of that and put it on our Facebook page, or our
show notes.
Show notes, yeah. If you want to apply to have a chance to win that, just buy us a coffee.
Buy Us a Coffee is the name of the program that we're using. I believe when our host puts it on their website, it's called Support the Show. Then as you progress along, you eventually see Buy Me Coffee. And I believe the smallest contribution there is either $3 or $5.
Yeah, I think it's $3 to $5. Yeah.
So
any
I'm
of that.
not sure where you have to go to buy a $5 coffee, but imagine that's
It's
where
a deal.
you are.
It's a deal.
It's a deal.
And what we do is we use that money to upgrade. In fact, you can't see this right now, but I have just bought a mic stand. Make it easier on my arms to hold up the mic and stuff. And we're in the process of getting Kevin one too. So it's just the small improvements that we make to the to the podcast.
Of course, the more support, the more items we could buy.
Right.
This year, our goal is to expand our audience. So please, please, please
comment,
share the episode with somebody. Let other people know that there's this discussion going on. Use the free fan mail on the website, Buzzsprout website, to get a hold of us. Suggest things you want us to talk about or clarify if we didn't talk enough about it. All those things go to improve our show, and that's what we want to do to attract more people.
Speaking of that, we took a comment from one of our listeners about we've reduced the music in the intro because it was hiding your voice and it was hard to hear you. So we wanted you to know that we did take that in consideration, and we have made that improvement. So anything like that, just please shout out and let us know.
Great. Now we're going to have people scrutinizing us.
Remember, this is a hobby.
Yeah. And honestly, we really don't mind if the comments skew towards negative or something we're doing wrong, because we want to improve.
Right. So let's say goodbye and hope that you're done passing kidney stones. We don't want any more of that.
Yeah, hopefully.
And by the time you hear from us next month, he'll be all healthy and healed up, hopefully.
We'll see.
Okay. Bye
See
now.
you next time, folks.
We are always looking to improve the podcast, so if you want to hear a specific topic, have a differing opinion, want to add something to the conversation, drop us an email. Our contact information is listed on our website. It's www.whenlifegivesyoulemons.net. We have recently added a companion YouTube channel called Making the Lemonade. If you enjoy the podcast, continue your enjoyment by joining us on YouTube.